Today I'm going to be doing a live walkthrough of the Build a Modern Web Application project on aws.amazon.com. It's a 2 to 3 hour project and it takes you through setting up a well-architected web application in AWS. There are 5 modules for the project, so in Module 1 we'll create a static website in S3. In Module 2 we'll host the application logic on Aws Fargate. In Module 3 we'll store the Misfit data into Amazon DynamoDB. In Module 4, we'll add user registration using Cognito. And then in Module 5, we'll capture the user clicks and analyze that with AWS Lambda and Kinesis Data Firehose. Just to show what that looks like visually, this is the architecture diagram for the project. So up here at the top, we have the IDE, which is AWS Cloud 9. We'll set up a CI/CD pipeline. We'll push those changes into Fargate. Users can access the site again through S3. They can log in and sign in through Amazon Cognito. And then down here, this is where we're processing the user clickstream data. When all of this is set up, this is what the front end is going to look like. So again, users can log in and register here. And then essentially they can find a Misfit pet that they like and they can adopt it. It's a pretty cookie cutter project, but there's some good experience that you can pull from this. So let's go ahead, get started, and start with stage 1. Alright, stage 1 is creating the static website. Let's take a look at what that all entails. Okay, so it looks like first we'll need an AWS account, so I'll be using my test AWS account. For the region, I'll be using US East 1 in North Virginia. And then it wants us to set up the IDE in Cloud 9. Looks like we'll then clone the GitHub repository for the project, and then we'll change directory to that repository. And then it looks like we'll create an S3 bucket. And then we'll just apply a bucket policy to it. So looks pretty simple. I'm going to log into my test AWS account here. Alright, so I'm going to move over to Cloud 9. We'll create the environment. Okay, I'll hit next there. Okay, we'll leave it with the default settings. Cool. Okay, so now let's give it a second. It should create the IDE environment. Okay, looks like the environment has been created. So first thing we'll need to do is clone the GitHub repository. So I'm just going to paste in that command. Okay, it's going to take a second. Okay, so we've cloned it. The file should now be there. And we're going to change over to that directory. Okay. Okay, so we now need to make an S3 bucket. So the project says to use this command, replace the bucket name. This should create the bucket. So let's just call it Mythical Misfits 2021 project. That should be unique. Let's go ahead and test that out. Hopefully it'll take that. Okay, cool. So that should make the bucket. Let's see. Okay, next we'll need to enable the bucket for website hosting. So I'm just going to replace out this name here. Okay, and then this should tell us that for website hosting in S3, we're going to use the index.html document as the main document. So I'm going to paste that in here. Okay, good to go there. Okay, so we now need to give the S3 bucket a bucket policy. So the policy that we need is in here. We just need to change out the bucket name. So let's open up that. And then it looks like it's this here. So we're saying allow for get object, and then we're going to replace this bucket name with our bucket name. And that bucket name is this here. Oops. Okay, cool. So we're saying we're allowing for get object anything in this bucket, essentially. Okay, so we've now updated the bucket policy to have the correct bucket name. We're now going to put that bucket policy into effect. So let's swap out the name here. Okay, let's copy that. Okay, cool. So I'm going to paste this in here. And again, we're saying AWS put bucket policy for this bucket and this specific policy. So if I hit enter there, that's going to apply the bucket policy. And now we want to copy the files that are in here, this index.html. We want to copy it over to the S3 bucket. So we're going to swap out the bucket name again for this one. Let's see. Okay, so now we're going to run this. This will copy over the files that we need for the website to S3. Okay, and now if we swap over to the actual S3 console and we go into the bucket and click it here, so this is the bucket we created, and we go over to permissions. This is the bucket policy that we applied. And then actually over here in properties, if we look down here, there should be static website hosting. So if we click this link here, we should be seeing the static content for our website. Yep, there it is. So that's the static content. All right, and that should be it for stage 1. So let's move over to stage 2 now. Okay, so module 2 is build dynamic website. So we're going to be hosting the application on a web server. So we'll be setting up Aws Fargate in ECS. And there's 3 subsections to this module. So first, we'll set up the core infrastructure. We'll then deploy the service into Fargate. And then after that, we'll automate deployments with AWS code services. So the first portion of that is to deploy out these CloudFormation templates that they provided. So there's quite a few. There's one for an Amazon VPC, or I guess we're building an Amazon VPC. It'll build 2 NAT gateways. It'll build a Dynamo VPC endpoint. It'll build a security group, and then it will also build out some IAM roles as well. So this is the command that we'll need to build that. So let's copy this here. Okay, so this is the command. So we're saying CloudFormation create stack, stat name, Mythical Misfits core stack, capabilities, named IAM, template body. So it's going to pull the template from here. So let's copy that. Put this into Cloud9, into the terminal. If we hit enter, that's going to create our stack. This should take about 10 minutes. We can view it here in the terminal, but let's just switch over to the CloudFormation portion in the GUI. Okay, so this is a stack that is creating. If we look here in events, it's loading up here, but it's going to show create complete for a lot of these, and the rest is create in progress. So let's give this a minute. We can keep refreshing, and in 10 minutes or so, this should be complete. Alright, so it says that the stack went into a complete status, so we should be good there. If we move back, we can also check and see that the stack is in a complete status from the terminal. So if we take this command here, the describe stack command, and just paste this in here, this will tell us as well that the stack is complete. So if we look here, stack sets, create complete. So that's good there. The stack did make some outputs that we're going to have to use later in the course. So you can see these here. These are all the outputs that have been made. We have to save those in a file for later in the project, so I'm just going to run this command here. It's going to put those outputs in a file here. So let's copy that, paste that in, and that should be that for the CloudFormation section. Next, we'll have to deploy the service with AWS Fargate. Okay, so in this portion, we'll be creating a Docker image, like it says, which should contain all of the code and configuration required to run Mythical Misfits backend as a microservice API created with Flask. So, and then we're going to take the Docker image, push it to ECR, and it should be available for when we need it in Fargate. So let's start with that. So here, if we look here, it's telling us we need to change directory, build the Docker image, and then it looks like we're going to test it. So Docker run, it should say running. Then if we test in the web, it should also work there as well. And then I guess finally, last portion of this is to create the ECR repository, get the credentials, push it to ECR, and then we can see it in ECR here. So let's do that. Let's go back over to Cloud9. So first thing I'm going to do is just change directory. So let's do that. I'm going to paste that in here. Change directory to the module 2 app folder. Okay, so the second portion, we have to run Docker build here. So it's saying replace with account ID and replace with region. So I'm going to pull both of these from the CloudFormation stack. These should be outputs from before. So let me pull that here. Current account. Grab that. Okay, and then current region is US East 1. Okay, so now we can take that command, go back over to Cloud9, paste this in here. And so what we're saying is Docker build, we're building a Docker container, -c for tagging it, and it's going to be service latest. So we can run that. It's going to take a second here. Okay, so that built the Docker image. If we pull this here, it has the Docker image tag, so let's copy this because we're going to need it. Okay, now we can test the Docker image. So if we pull the Docker image tag, copy it here, and then just put it here. So we're saying Docker run, we can copy that, paste this in here. Cool. So it looks like that's working. It's saying running on, it's saying running, so that's good. Let's Control C to get out of that. Okay, so that's good. The Docker image was built. We can now push that Docker image to ECR, the Elastic Container Registry. So I'm going to copy this command here, paste it in. We're saying create repository, repository name, Mythical Misfits, /service. So I'll hit enter there. Looks like that completed, which is good. Okay, so we now need to get the credentials for the repository. So if we copy this command here and go back, this is going to give us some information, quite a bit. Let's expand that. Okay, I'm going to copy all this. Copy. And I'll paste this down into my info here. Okay, so that copied that. I think if we run this command now, it should give us the login credentials. Let's try that. Okay, so that said completed, says login succeeded, so that's good. If we go back now and look, it's telling us we need to push the image to ECR. Let's go back again. Okay, so it's saying push image to ECR. This is the image tag. Okay, so it's now pushing that Docker image to ECR. Okay, so it says that image has now been pushed to ECR. So if we run a command, we should be able to see the image in ECR. Okay, cool. So it is in fact in ECR now. We ran this command here to say describe images, and it does show that it is in ECR. So that is good. We just created the Flask service, so the next thing we need to do is to configure the service prerequisites in ECS. So let's take a look at that step. Okay, so it's saying that we need to create a Fargate cluster in ECS, set up the CloudWatch log group for that, and then register the ECS task definition. So let's start up here. Let's just go ahead and create the cluster. So we'll copy this, move back over to Cloud9, and paste this in here. And that will create the cluster. Looks like that completed, so that's good. Let's move back. Okay, it's saying to create the log group in Cloud9, so let's copy this here. We're going to paste this in. And in CloudWatch, that has created the log group. So that's good. Move back again. And now it's saying that we need to create or register an ECS task definition. So it looks like the task definition is in the repository that we cloned, so it's going to be in this path. Okay, so it's saying that we need to update one of the values in the task definition. So this is where the file's at. Let's find that in the IDE. Okay, so now we just need to change out all the values here. Okay, and then I think that's it. So let's go ahead and save that. Save. Okay, so now that we have updated those values, we can go back, take this command, and we can run this, and this will update the task definition and register, or sorry, it will register the ECS task definition. So paste, ECS register, task definition, and it's looking at that file, so hit enter. That's good. If we move back now, okay, so that's good. So now we can go to step 3, which is enabling a load balancer for the Fargate service. Okay, so let's look in here. So it's saying that we're going to set up a load balancer for the Fargate service. So that way the front end has a singular DNS name that it can point to, and so we can scale in and out. So it looks like in that first section here, we're just going to create the load balancer, then we're going to create a target group, and then we're going to create a load balancer listener. So let's take this command here. If you look at it, it says we need to replace this portion with public subnet 1 and this portion with public subnet 2. So both of those were outputs in the original CloudFormation stack. So let's go back over to that, and let's just look at the command. So this is the command here. We're looking for public subnet 1. So that would be public subnet 1, this here. Let's copy that. Okay. And then public subnet 2 is this here. Okay, so I've copied that command. We can go back to Cloud9 now. This is going to create the load balancer. So let's hit enter there. Okay, cool. So that should be created. Let's go back. Okay, so now we need to create a load balancer target group. So essentially what we're saying is for any of our ECS containers that are created, we want them to be registered as a target, so traffic from the network load balancer will be sent to them. So let's take this command here, got it pulled up here, and it looks like it wants us to change out one of these values. So I think it's this here. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So it's saying replace VPC ID. So this is also in CloudFormation. Let's see this here. Copy that, pull it back up here. Let's just replace this out. Okay. Okay, let's take this, and then now we can paste it into Cloud9. Okay, and we can go back here. Okay, now we need to make a load balancer listener. So the command here is saying anything listening, or when the network load balancer gets traffic on port 80, we're going to send it to the targets. So we need to go ahead and replace out this value here. So it's saying replace with NLB target group ARN. So we could get that from the console, but it was previously outputted to this file here. So if we move over to target group output, it's just this ARN here. So I'm going to copy that. Copy. Let's pull it up here. And then we can do replace with NLB target group ARN. Okay. Cool. So let's copy this. Okay, and that looks like it failed. So I think I missed a value there. Let's see. Yep, yeah, so I missed this one here, so let's find that. I think this is in NLB output here, so let's find that. Okay, let's see. Okay, load balancer ARN, pull that here. Okay, so let's copy that now. Now when we paste this, it should ideally work. Okay, that also did not work. I must have done something wrong. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like I put in one value, missed the other one again. So let's go back, grab the correct value here. This is the one we're missing. Put this in. Just triple check it. So that's a full command. So let's copy that. Go back. Paste that in. And there we go. That worked. So that's good. Let's now go back to the documentation. And it looks like that step is complete. So we made the network load balancer, we made the target group, and then we made the load balancer listener. So now let's move on to creating the service with Fargate. Okay, so in here, it looks like this first portion is saying that if you haven't used ECS before, you need to make a service linked role so ECS can make ECS API request. I tried that out here. It looks like I've probably already used it, so that should be already taken, so that's fine. Next step here is to create the actual service. So we've created the network load balancer. We need to make the actual ECS service where our containers can run. So there's a file in here for that, the service definition. If we look at that, it's saying that we need to replace some of these values. So here it's also saying desired count. So I guess desired count is one container. But let's replace out these values. So security group ID is going to be, I think this Fargate container security group. So let's copy that. Put that in here. And then it's asking for the private subnet. So private subnet 1 is this here. This is from our VPC. Private subnet 2 is also in here. Same thing, we'll copy, then paste. And we spaced it too much there, so let's backspace. Okay, and then down here it's asking for the network load balancer target group ARN, which was down here. So let's see. Down here. Now Control S to save. Let's try it again just in case. Okay, there we go. So that's good. Let's go back here. Let's take this command, copy that. And now with that file updated, the service definition, we can go in here and run it, and that will create the ECS service. Okay, cool. So that finished, looks good. Let's go back down, come back here. And now it's saying we can test it out. So let's see. So to test it, we need the DNS name that we created with the network load balancer. So that's this here. I'm just going to copy it in here. Because it's publicly facing, we should be able to just paste it into a web browser. So if I paste it in, that should pull it up. And it did not. Okay, so when I tested, it failed. Failed for two reasons. One, the link that I pasted in, I copied in the wrong one. The correct link is actually this here. Let me paste it in here. This is the correct link attached to the network load balancer. I just had the wrong one copied. But I also did find one other thing that was stopping it from working. So I found here, if you go to the task definition and look at the JSON, this portion here said replace me. So I updated the region to US East 1. And then I updated the service to use the correct revision of the task definition. So you can see here, it's currently on revision 3. And then now when we go in here and paste in a link, it does work. So two simple changes, must have glossed over those a minute ago, but it looks to be working now. So we can go ahead and go on to the next step now. Okay, so next step is to update the index.html file to point at the network load balancer. So the file that we're going to need to update is index.html. So if we go back here and pull up Cloud9, we'll have to just click on this index.html file in here. So let me find that. Let's see. Module 2 web. Yep, so it's this index.html file here. And if you look down at the bottom in the JavaScript section, let's see. Okay, here it is. So this portion here needs to be switched out for the Elastic Load Balancer link. So let me pull that up here. Okay, so we'll go back. And then we'll replace this here. Paste in that link. We'll save it. And then now we just need to push it up to S3. So the command needed for that is here. So AWS S3 copy. And we'll change out the bucket name there. So this here. Now we'll swap out the bucket name. Cool. So now we can take this, paste this into Cloud9, and this will push our new index.html file up to S3. Okay, that's good. So now we can go back to S3 and we can pull the link for the bucket so we can see the static website. Okay, so if we click the link here for the bucket, it'll come up and you'll now see that it has new data here. So all of this information is being pulled from the backend in Fargate, and it's pulling that information by going through this portion here, the network load balancer here that we populated. So it's pointing towards the network load balancer, pulling data from the backend in Fargate, and then populating it in the front end on the website. Okay, so we've deployed the service into Fargate, and the next step is to automate deployments using AWS code services. So essentially this is the architecture diagram of what we're going to be setting up. So we're just setting up a CI/CD pipeline. Code pipeline is going to orchestrate that. AWS Cloud9, when we push the code into Code Commit, Code pipeline is then going to build it and deploy it to Fargate. So the first step it looks like we're going to have to do is to create a second S3 bucket. So in the process of building and deploying, I guess there's going to be some files that need to go in there. So let's copy this here. I'll pull up my document. And we'll just need to change out the bucket name. So I'm just going to make it similar to what we have here and just change it a little bit. Bucket 2. And we will call it artifacts. Okay, so we'll make that. So we're saying here AWS S3 make bucket, and then this is going to be the bucket name. So I'll go over to code 9 and I will paste this in. That just created the bucket. So if we go back now, let's see what it says to do next. Okay, so next it's saying that we need to apply a bucket policy to that bucket. So the bucket policy that we need is stored here in the repository files. So I'm going to go back and check here for that file. Okay, so this is the bucket policy. It looks like we need to provide permissions to the bucket, so code build can interact with it, and also so code pipeline can interact with it. So let's look at CloudFormation and pull those values that we need. Okay, so it looks like it's asking for the code build role ARN. So let's go back here. Code build role ARN is right here, so let's copy that. Paste it in here. Paste it in here as well. Okay, now it wants the code pipeline role ARN. Let's grab that. Okay, and then it wants the bucket name, so let's grab that. Okay, so all of those should be set now, so we can go ahead and save that file. If we go back here now, we can grab this command. So this is to actually apply the bucket policy to the bucket. So let's go back. Let's just change out the bucket name here. Okay, so I'll copy that command and then just paste that in here, and this is going to apply the bucket policy to that artifacts bucket. Okay, so that's been applied. Let's go back now. Okay, the next step is to create a code commit repository. So we're going to start building the CI/CD pipeline. So this is where we're actually going to store the code. So let's run this command to create that. Okay, so that's created the repository. If we go back now, we need to set up a code build project. So what it's saying is that when we run code build, it's going to build the new Docker image and then push out that new version to ECR. So it looks like they've already set up the buildspec.yaml file for how they're going to actually build the code and the Docker image. And then it looks like this file here we may need to update, so let's pull this up. Okay, and then I guess it wants us to replace all of these values here. So let's start here. Let's see. So it's saying replace it with the account ID. I believe that's in CloudFormation. So let's place that in here. Okay, that's good. Okay, and then it's saying replace it with the region, so we're in US East 1. And then it also wants us to replace the code build role ARN, which is in here. Okay, so all of those should now be filled out. We can save it. And if we go back, the actual command to build that code build project is in here. So I'm going to copy this, paste this in here, and that is going to create the code build project. So that's good. Let's go back now. Now that we've got the project, it wants us to set up the actual pipeline for it. Okay, the pipeline is going to orchestrate the code build and code deployment process with code commit and with code build. So it looks like there's a file here as well that we also need to update, codepipeline.json. So let's open that. We can replace out these values. So code pipeline role ARN is in here. And then the bucket name, we got that here as well. Okay, so those values should now be changed out. We can go back and get the command needed. So this is going to create the code pipeline. So let's copy, paste, and that's created the pipeline. Now we can go back. Okay, so we need to provide code build permissions to push to ECR. So there's this file here, ECR policy. We also need to update some values there. Let's go back, ECR policy, and then we need the code build rolled ARN. So let's grab that. Copy, paste that in here, save that, and go back. And now we can go ahead and paste in this command. This is going to create the policy. Okay, so that's good. Now if we go back, that completes that step. So I guess the next portion is just to test the pipeline. So let's try that out. It looks like to test it, we're going to have to set up Git. So let's see what they want us to do here. Okay, so I'm just going to take this command and I'm going to update these values in here. Okay, so I've copied those commands and updated those values. So now we can go ahead and start putting in those commands to configure Git. So I'm just going to paste in this first one here. I'm going to keep going down the list. If they're successful, they shouldn't say anything back to us. Okay, so those should configure Git. Now I'm just going to change the directory over to the environment folder. And now we can try to clone the repository. It should tell us that it's empty. So let's try that. Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's saying could not resolve host. That actually might not be correct. Let's see here. Okay, so I replaced out the region. Now I'm going to paste in one more time. That should work. Okay, yep, and it's saying that it's an empty repository. So I'm going to go back, and now what I'm just going to do is copy the files that we have in our IDE into Code Commit. Okay, so those should copy it. Let's go back here. Now we can try to push a code change, and that should kick off the code pipeline process, and it should trigger it to build and then deploy out to Fargate. Okay, so to push a change, we actually have to first make a change. So it looks like this file here is what Fargate uses to reply with the information of the ages and the names. So let's open this up and just change the name of one of the characters, and then when we push it, it should take 5 to 10 minutes, and then it should update. So let's go back. Let's see. Okay, so this is the file here. If I open this up, this tells us all of the ages. So this is the one we're going to shoot for. This one here, so Evangeline. We're going to change the age to 3000, and now we can save that file. And if we go back here, let's see, we'll change over to that directory where that file is. Okay, and then we're just going to run these git commands, so git add, git commit, and then git push. So let's copy these. Run those in here, commit, and then git push. So we've pushed it. This is probably going to take a few minutes. After 5 to 10 minutes, we should be able to then go back to the site, and it should have the updated age. So let's give this a minute here. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes. If we go over to the code pipeline page, you can see that it has succeeded. So it took the code from code commit, built it with code build, and then deployed it to ECS. So if we go back to the website now and test and just refresh the page, you'll now see that the age is 3000. So the pipeline is working. And I think if we look back here, that should be the end of module 2. So we can go ahead and move over to module 3 now. Module 3 is store Misfit data. So in this module, we'll be setting up a DynamoDB table. Most of the data right now, it looks like, is in a static JSON file. So essentially what we'll be doing is moving that data from the static JSON file into DynamoDB, which should make it a bit more scalable. So it looks like there are 3 steps in this module. So first, we'll add the DynamoDB database, and then we'll commit some changes, and then we'll have to update the website in S3. So let's take a look at this first section here. Okay, so it looks like the file with the information to create the data is here in this file. So if we look back at it over here, this is it. So it's saying provision throughput, 5 read and write capacity units, and then it's giving some more information here. And then if we go back, let's see, it looks like this is the command to create the table. So let's go ahead and copy this and just paste that into Cloud9. Okay, that should go ahead and create the table. Let's flip back over to the instructions now. Okay, so we just created it. We can run this, which should describe out and give us some details of the table. Okay, yep, so this is a lot of the same information that we saw in that file. So that's good. Let's flip back. Okay, and then we can run a scan. It should be similar to what this shows here, so it should be showing that no data is currently in there. Yep, cool. So same information saying no data is currently in the table. So now we just need to push the data that we do have into the table. It looks like this is the command that we're going to use here. So it's pulling this file, which should have some information, and it's going to push the data that we have into DynamoDB. So let's copy this here. Go back to the IDE, and then just paste in that command. Okay, so that's good. Let's flip back. And now if we run this command here, which scans again, we should see that we now have data in the table. Okay, cool. So if you look now, it's now saying scan count 12. So more than what we had in there before. So that's good. It looks like the data copied over. Okay, so we've completed that first subsection. Let's move on to the next portion, which is commit your first real code change. Let's look at that. Okay, so it looks like it's saying, let's see. So it looks like it's saying that we now need to update the application to point towards the actual DynamoDB database instead of the static JSON file. So this command here, it looks like it's copying files from the module 3 folder and putting it into the services folder. So let's copy this here and just paste that into the IDE. Okay, so that copied the files. Let's go back now. Okay, and then it looks like it's saying that we need to put those files into code commit. So I'm just going to copy these and add all this here. So cd into the correct directory. Okay, cool. And then git add, git commit, and git push. So we'll copy all these here. Just paste them in. Git commit, and then the last one would be git push. Okay, then let's go back here. Okay, and then now that we've pushed it, it's going to trigger the pipeline to run. So it looks like that's going to take 5 to 10 minutes. And again, that should build the code, push it out to Fargate, and then it should be updated. So let's let that run for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and look at step 3 here. Okay, so it's been a few minutes. If we look at code pipeline now, I'm just going to refresh this here. Okay, if we look at it, it's saying that the process finished, so it's saying it built it, and then it deployed it to ECS. So that's good. If we go back now to the documentation and look at step 3, it's saying that we need to publish a new index.html or HTML file to our S3 bucket. And it's also saying that we need to update this file here with the correct network load balancer string. So let's pull up that file here. Let's see. Okay, so it's saying under web and then index.html. And then there is something in here that says replace me. Okay, yep, so it's this, and we need to replace that with the network load balancer. So let's find that. Okay, so from our NLB output file, we have this DNS name here. So we can copy this, go back to index.html, and then paste this in here. Okay, and then we can save that. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, that should be it. And then let's go back. Take this, let's see. Okay, and then we can go ahead and run this file. So we're copying that new file over to S3. And we'll also need to update that, so I'm going to paste this in here. And then this is our bucket name. So copy. Okay, we can take this now, go back, and paste that in there. Okay, so that should update our file in S3. Let's go back. It's saying we can now visit the Misfits page, so let's just go back to S3 here. Okay, we're back in S3, so we're going to click on the link here to see our website. I'm going to click on that. Okay, so that initially did not work, but I went back and found that this here, when I put in the network load balancer link, I missed the HTTP, so it didn't load properly when I used that. So I saved it and re-uploaded, and when I go back now, you can see that everything shows up properly, the data populates, and then we also have this filter option here as well. So now that it's pointing towards DynamoDB, you have the option to filter the data. So that should be it for Module 3. Let's go back and see if there's anything else left here. Nope, that should be it. So let's go ahead and move on to Module 4. Alright, section 4 is register users. So in this section, we'll be setting up Amazon Cognito so users can register and sign in to the site. And then we'll also be placing an API in front of our network load balancer. So let's take a look at the steps for the section. So down here, it looks like it says in step 1, we'll add a user pool for the website users. In section 2, we'll add a new REST API with Amazon API Gateway. And then in step 3, we'll update the Mythical Misfits website. So let's look into section 1 here of that. Okay, so first thing it wants us to do is run this command to create the Cognito user pool. So I'm just going to copy this here. Okay, and then we can move over and just paste this in. And then once this finishes, it also wants us to copy the data. So let's see. Let me flip back here. Okay, so it wants us to copy the whole response. So I'm just going to copy all of this data here. Let's see. Okay, and then it wants us to create the user pool client. So I'm going to take this command here and just copy it. And then it looks like we need to replace out the user pool ID there. So if I pull this up here, I'm just going to paste this in. And then this value here, the user pool ID, is in that response that we got before. So I'm just going to pull it here. Okay, and then let's go back up. Okay, then I'm going to paste that in there, and then we can now run this command. Okay, looks good. Let's go back now. Okay, cool. So we completed the first section there. Let's go ahead and move on to the second section. So now we're going to set up the REST API. Okay, so it's saying that it wants us to create a VPC link so that we can privately integrate with the network load balancer. And then it also says that in this particular project, the network load balancer that we made is publicly facing, just so we could do the test, but I guess it's saying to save time, we're just going to leave it publicly facing. So I'm going to take this command here and then it looks like we have to replace a value out here, so I'm just going to pull this up, paste this in here. Oh, didn't work. Okay, and then it wants us to put in the network load balancer ARN, so I'm just going to pull that from the IDE. Okay. Okay, so we can put this in here now, hit enter, and then I think, from what it said, it looks like it may take some time. Let's see. Okay, yep, so it looks like it should take 5 to 10 minutes. I think if we go back to the API Gateway console now and refresh, okay, looks like it is there, so let's see. Okay, yep, yeah, so it looks like it's creating, so let's just give it some time, and then I'll come back, and we can move on to the next step. Okay, so it looks like the VPC link finished creating now, so we can go back to the documentation, and it looks like the next step is to create the REST API using Swagger. So the Swagger definition file is here, and it looks like there's a few values that we're going to need to replace out. So once we replace those, we can then run this command. So I'm just going to open up that file here, and then it looks like we'll just have to search for everything that has replaced me. So there's 13 values. Let's just start with the first one. Okay, so for this first one, it is asking for, I guess, the ARN for the Cognito user pool. So I'm just going to copy that here and paste it in. Okay, there we go. Still tech. Okay. Okay, and then I'm just going to go through all of these, replace out the values, and then come back when I'm finished with that. Okay, so I finished inputting all the values in here, so there were about 13 of them, and mainly they were just swapping out the VPC link ID and then also the network load balancer DNS name. So we can go back now, take this command, and this will start building the API. So let's copy this, go back, and then just paste this in here. And that is going to start building out the API. So let's hit enter there. Okay, and then let's see. Okay, so that created the API, but we now need to deploy it out to a stage. So if we look here, this is the command we'll need to use. So I'm just going to copy this here. And we'll need to replace the API ID with the one that we have. So let's replace that out here. Okay, and then this is the API ID. So I'm just going to copy that and put it here. And then we'll be deploying the API out to the prod stage. So I'll copy, and now we can go back to the IDE and just paste this in here. And if we look, actually first before we do that, if we look here in API, under API in the console, you can see there are no APIs yet. So we're going to go back and then just paste in the command, and that will deploy out our API. Okay, and then let's just see if it's here yet. Okay, yep, there it is. So I'm going to click into this. Okay, so and then if we hit stages here, we'll see our prod stage. So I'm going to click that. And then the link that we need is here. So this is the link. I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to go back to the documentation. It looks like we just need to add misfits to the end. So let's try that out. Okay, cool. So it did, it pulled all the data, so that looks good. And then let's go back here. It looks like that's the end of that step. So we just deployed out the API, and then we did a test, and it looks like it's pulling all the data as it should. So that's good. The last step here is to update the Mythical Misfits website. So let's see what we need to do here. Okay, so it says the functionality to view Misfit profiles and adopt them is part of the Python code that they included in the project. So it looks like we just need to copy that code into the correct folder, and then we can push it out and kick off the code pipeline process. So let's copy this here and just do that really quick. Okay, so change directory, and then I guess we're copying files that we need here. Okay, then let's go back, and then we're just going to do git add, git commit, and then git push. Okay, and then git push. And that is going to kick off the CI/CD pipeline process. So let's go back now. It says that we can continue on with the next portion while that process is running. So it looks like we need to update the index.html file with some new values. So let's see. Looks like that file is under the web folder. So let's go there. Okay, let's see. Okay, it looks like we just need to replace out these values here. So I'm going to go back over to the file. Let's see. So it should just be these ones here. So I'm just going to pull those values, replace them out, and then I'll come back once I'm done with that. Okay, so I've replaced out those 4 values here that needed to be replaced. We can go back now and take a look at what needs to happen next. Okay, so it looks like we just need to copy those files up to S3 now. So we're copying the index.html file that we just copied, and then there's also some other files. It looks like there were some extra JavaScript files in here as well that are going to interact with Cognito. So let's go ahead and run that command now. It looks like we actually also need to update the bucket name, so I'm just going to put this in here, and then our bucket name is up top. So let's see. Okay, that's it. Okay, so we can copy that command now and just run that in the IDE. Okay, cool. So that copied the files. Let's go back now. Okay, so that should be the end of the section. So we can go to the S3 site now and just test it out. So I'm just going to pull that up here. Okay, so I just pulled up the website here, and now you can see that we have this new feature. So it says login and register. And if we click that, we can put in our email, our password, and then log in. And we can also go here and hit register. So we can put in an email to register, put in a password, put it in again, and then hit register. So I tested the registration process, and it actually failed. And I looked into it, and it looks like it failed for 2 reasons. So the first reason is that the code pipeline during the build process, it failed. So if we look in history here, you can see that it failed. So I'm just going to pull up the commands. You can see where it says link to execution details. This will pull up some more information showing us why it failed. So if you look down here, it starts running. It enters the build phase. Looks like it goes down here, and then it gets to the point to where it tries to run Docker build, and then that fails. So I looked into it, I was able to find this. So it says that we needed to update some of the values in the Docker run file. So I went in the Docker run file down here, and then I just updated some of the values in here. And then when I finished, I went back, and it seemed to run properly after that. So after updating the Docker run file, you can see that it succeeded the build, and then it succeeded the deploy process as well. So that was good. But then I went back again and tested, and it still failed, so it was saying network error. So I read back over the instructions, and I found this portion here. Let me get it pulled up here. So I found this portion. So it says we updated the index.html file, but we also had to update 2 other files. Because I was, voicing over and kind of reading fast, I kind of skipped over that. But I went in here and also updated the confirm.html file and then the register.html file. And then I went back to the site and I was able to register the user. And then as you can see now, it says that I'm logged in. So if I go here and click view profile, this is the one that we looked at earlier. So we can hit adopt me now. And then under my profile, I'll have adopted a Misfit. So that should be everything for Module 4, so we can go ahead and move on to Module 5. Module 5 is Capture User Clicks. So in this section, we'll be setting up Kinesis Data Firehose and Lambda so that we can process user clicks on the front end. So essentially, this is what we'll be doing here. This is the architecture diagram. So when users are accessing the site, when they click on Misfit profiles, that generates clickstream data, which then gets sent to API Gateway. That data then goes into Kinesis Data Firehose, and then it's processed by Lambda, and then we can store the data in S3 so that we can analyze it and process it later. So there's a few steps for this module, so let's take a look down here. Step 1 is to create the streaming service code. Step 2, update the Lambda function package and code. Step 3, create the streaming service stack. Step 4, send Misfit profile clicks to our new microservice. And then step 5 is just to clean up and remove everything that we created. So let's go ahead and take a look at step 1 here. Okay, so it looks like it wants us to create a new CloudFormation stack. So it wants us to deploy it out. So it's going to contain some infrastructure environment resources, and then it's also going to contain the AWS Lambda code that's going to execute when we process these streaming events. So let's copy this portion here. So this is the first portion. They just want us to create the repository and code commit. So let's create that. Okay, so that's created, and then we'll need this link here to clone it. So I'm just going to copy this complete response here. Okay, so I've pasted it in here, so we have that clone URL link that we're going to need. Let's go back here and see what it wants us to do next. Okay, so it wants us to clone it, so we'll just need this URL here. So we'll change directory to the proper location. And then we can go back here, and then it wants us to clone the URL. So let's take a look at that link. Okay, yep, here it is. So let's see. Okay, so we'll do git clone here, and then paste in that new Git repository link that we just made. Okay, and then, like it says, it's empty since we just created it, so let's go back and take a look at what's next. Okay, so now that we have the repository there, it just wants us to copy in the files that we'll need. So I guess first it wants us to, copy in the files in Module 5 in the Module 5 folder, and then we'll just copy in the CloudFormation template. So I'm just going to run these here. Okay. Okay, there we go. So we've copied in the data that we need into the repository. So let's go ahead and take a look at step 2 now. Okay, so we copied the code that we need. This first section here in step 2 is essentially saying that we need to package together all the dependencies that we'll need so that Lambda can use it. So I'm just going to copy this command here and then go back and just paste it in, and that should do that. Okay, and then if we go back here, now it's saying that we need to update the Lambda function code. So let's see where that is. Okay, so here's that file that it was referencing. So it's saying that we need to replace out this portion here, which is the same API endpoint that we created in module 4. So that should be in the index.html file, so I'm just going to find that here. Okay, so I found that API endpoint link, so I'm just going to paste it in here. Okay, there we go. So it should be, let's see, it should be that link and then plus Misfits, and then I guess it's going to be plus the Misfit ID. So let's go back and see what's next. Okay, and then I guess it just wants us to push that into code commit. So we'll do git add, git commit, and then git push. Okay, so we've just pushed those files into code commit. So let's go back and look at what's in step 3. Okay, so the first section of step 3, it wants us to create an S3 bucket. So I think this is where the data is going to go once it's been processed and analyzed. And then I guess second step, it wants us to package the code for Lambda. Because we're going to use SAM to package the code, and then we're going to deploy it out using SAM deploy into a CloudFormation template. So let's start with this first section here. So it wants us to create an S3 bucket, and it wants us to do it through the GUI. So I'm just going to pull up S3 here. Okay, so I've got S3 open. We just need to create a bucket now. So let's hit create, and then the bucket name needs to be unique. So I'm going to call it process clicks project 2021. That should be unique. I'm just going to copy that here and then paste it into our notes. And then we can leave it in US East 1. We can keep block all public access, I believe, and then let's go down here and just hit create. Okay, so that's been created. Let's go back now. Looks like next thing it wants us to do is package the files with SAM so that we can upload it and transform it into a CloudFormation template. So let's copy this here. We'll need to replace out the bucket name, so I'm just going to change that out. Okay, and then that next command is going to be to deploy it into a CloudFormation template using the SAM stack that we just created. So I'm just going to copy this here. And then let's see, anything need to be changed here? Nope, so that should be good. So now we can go back over to the IDE. Just going to copy this first command. So again, this is going to package all of our code using SAM. Okay, so it packaged them, and then we can go ahead and deploy it out. And it looks like it's going to deploy out to CloudFormation, and the stack name will be Mythical Misfits streaming stack here. So let's copy and paste this. Okay, it says invalid template path, so let's take a look. Okay, so it said invalid template path, so I looked and I don't see a cloud CFN folder here, so I removed that from the path. I'm just going to paste it in one more time, and this should deploy out to CloudFormation. Nope, still didn't like it, so let's see. Okay, there we go. So I copied and pasted the wrong thing, so I just put it, I changed it out and used the proper command, and it looks like it's creating now. So I'm going to give that just a moment, and then we should be able to see that in CloudFormation. Okay, so it says it's now been completed. So if we look at CloudFormation, you can also see here that it says completed, and then under events you can see everything that's been created. So let's move back now to the instructions. That should be it for step 3. And let's just take a look at step 4 now. Okay, so step 4 is saying that we need to update the front end, which includes new JavaScript so it can process the clicks. And I guess it's saying the file is here, so I'm going to copy this here or pull up this file here and then swap out all the values, and then we can go ahead and move on to the second step here. Okay, so I've now updated the values in the index.html file and the other 2 HTML files under module 5. So I can go back now, and it looks like we just need to push that new website version into S3. So I'm just going to copy this here. Okay, and then we can replace out this last portion with the bucket name. So I'm just going to grab our bucket name. Should be here. Okay, and then we can copy this and just paste that in, and that will copy our files up to S3. Okay, so that's been done. Let's look back here, see what we need to do next. Okay, so it looks like that should be about it. So when we go back, we should be able to refresh the site. That'll give us the new website, and then we can click around, and those records that are going to be sent through Kinesis, processed by Lambda, and then stored into S3. So I'm just going to pull up the site here really quick. So I'm going to pull it up in S3. Okay, so now I've got the site pulled up, so we can just click around a few times. So let's click View Profile. Let's adopt this one. We can go back. Adopt this one as well. And then we can just log out. And so those clicks that we just made should be sent through Kinesis Data Firehose, and again, processed by Lambda, and then sent into S3. So I'm just going to pull up S3 here now. It may take a second, but let's see if we see anything here yet. Okay, anywho, it does look like the data went into the bucket, so it looks like everything should be working. The site, this is the finished product like we saw at the beginning. So again, you can just adopt a pet, you can log in and register. So pretty cool project. Let's go back. I think there was one last step. Okay, yeah, so it looks like the last step is just to clean up, which I'm going to do off camera. Okay, pretty cool. So it looks like that is the end of the project. We've created the project per the instructions. I appreciate everyone who took the time to watch this video. If you want to see some more information on this, check out the blog post, which will be linked below. And thanks again, everyone.